11 championship rings with 2 different teams, Phil Jackson is arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time. It is understandable why Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, would play for none other than Coach Jackson during most of his career. This makes sense. A leader like Jordan wanted to follow a strong leader, one stronger than himself, a man who Jordan believed was the best in the business. This is the law of respect. People naturally follow leaders sounder than themselves. So, for example, if your leadership level is an 8, you will attract 7s and 6s. If your leadership level is a 5, you'll attract 2s and 3s. It's impossible to attract anyone higher than yourself. Kind of fairly intuitive, it relates to the law of the lid. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential. The higher the individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid on his potential. Personal success without leadership ability only brings limited effectiveness. Think about it. Entrepreneurs are skilled at seeing opportunities and going after it. They see a market and understand it in a way that produces a profit. But what sets apart great entrepreneurs from normal ones is that they understand and know how to lead people. Think of Steve Jobs and Apple. Some say he was a harsh leader, but his results spoke for themselves. Apple went from sales from being 3.5% to owning 75% of the music player market by 2005 when he was reinstated to CEO. He understood his business and the people inside and out. Whatever you accomplish is restricted by your ability to lead others. The greater the impact you want to make, the greater your leadership ability needs to be. Some might say, well, if I'm bad with people, then I just need to get someone who's extroverted to complement my weaknesses. Well, that's exactly right. The law of the inner circle. Not only should you be working on developing your personal skills, you should be surrounded by people that are similar in pursuit, yet complement your weaknesses. Birds of a feather flock together, your rat pack, whatever you want to call it, these people will elevate you because you are the average of your 5 closest friends, and nobody does anything great alone. You see the reverse all the time with certain athletes who achieve success professionally. Some shoot themselves in the foot, literally, and never reach their full potential, which can largely be attributed to the kind of people they spend their time with. Secondly, if you think your people are negative, then you better check your own attitude. Rarely do positive and negative people hang out. This is the law of magnetism. Who you are is who you attract. What type of perfect employee do you want? Is he ambitious, independent, have a positive attitude? Believe it or not, whom you attract is determined not by what you want, it's determined by who you are. Finally, nothing is more confusing than people who give good advice but set a bad example, and nothing is more convincing than people who give good advice and set a good example. The law of the picture. It's no wonder why poll after poll amongst American workers, the single most common trait people value is being led by example. The law of the picture is literal. When times are tough and all hell breaks loose, the market's crashing and the enemy's at the front gates, followers need you, their leader, as the living, breathing picture most. You who is unfazed by the circumstance, still enthusiastic, which in turn motivates them to keep on going. You cannot ask those who work for you to do something you're unwilling to do yourself. In 1994, institutional investors of Saatchi & Saatchi forced the board of directors to dismiss Maurice Saatchi, the company's CEO. What was the result? Several executives followed him out. So did many of the company's largest accounts, including British Airways and Mars, the candy maker. Saatchi's influence was so great that his departure caused the company's stock to fall immediately from $86 to $4 per share. What happened is the result of the law of influence. Saatchi lost his title and position, but he continued to be the leader. Leadership cannot be bestowed, prearranged, or assigned, and is often confused with managing. It comes only from the law of influence, and that cannot be mandated. It must be earned. Many people often try to define what a leader looks like. You gotta have height, charisma, be handsome and stout. Well, that's not necessarily true. The underlying trait of every leader is how much influence you have in your organization. Don't look at someone's qualifications or the resume, check their influence. The proof of leadership is always found in the followers. If you have to tell people you are, you probably aren't. How do you build your influence? The law of solid ground. Trust is the foundation of leadership. Trust is probably the single most important thing for a leader when it comes to dealing with people, bar none. You cannot repeatedly be dishonest and expect your people to follow you without any hesitation. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from General Norman Schwarzkopf. Leadership is a potent combination of strategy and character, but you must be without one, be without strategy. Think of Richard Nixon or reports of sexual harassment in the church or college campuses. Incidents of abuse undermine the leadership as well as the trust the public has in these organizations. It's okay to make an honest mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes and for sure will continue to make plenty more. But there's a difference between owning up to it versus lying about it or blaming others for it. Build trust with the 3 C's, consistently emphasizing character, competence, and connection to your people. When it comes to working with people, the heart comes before the head. Think about motivational speakers like Eric Thomas, who's famous for his YouTube video, Succeed as Bad as You Want to Breathe. Good speakers touch emotionally before they ask for your vote or call to action. Do you want to hear a bunch of dry statistics, or would you rather see pictures, stories, and hear jokes? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Once you develop trust, people fall into the law of buy-in. People buy into the leader, then the vision. The leader finds the dream, and then the people. The people find the leader, and then the dream. Most leaders have it kind of backwards. Just because you think your cause is good doesn't mean it's enough to get people to follow you. People buy Jordans because they have bought into Michael Jordan, not the other way around. Similarly, people need to trust you and connect with you before you try to accomplish your mission. At the end of the day, it's about adding value. Your job as a leader is to build others. Are you making the organization better than it was before you entered? If that's a no, you may as well do nothing at all. It is tough, because human beings are naturally selfish. I'm introverted, and adding value requires me to get out of my comfort zone. But if that's what it takes to be a leader who others want to follow, that's what you gotta do. Do not pray for easy lives, pray to be stronger men. JFK. Napoleon Bonaparte is arguably one of the greatest military strategists of all time. He created his own luck through intense calculation, careful planning, and branching out every which way a battle could go. He spent days looking at maps and hours planning possibilities, so even when he did make a mistake, he could easily react, which allowed him to dominate many battles throughout Europe. Napoleon followed the law of navigation. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Leaders plan the whole trip in their minds before they leave the dock. They see how they're getting to their destination and understand what obstacles there will be along the way along the horizon. Navigating also means not looking just forward, but also backward. Looking at previous errors in judgment, poor methods, or previously wrong assumptions can only help chart the new course just as well. The law of navigation is preparation. You want to answer people's questions in your speech before they ask. With preparation comes sacrifice. There's a common misperception among people who aren't leaders that leadership is all about the perks and power and relaxing when you get to the top. On the contrary, every person who has achieved any success in life will tell you that they have made many sacrifices to do so. People dedicate hours of study and pay thousands in tuition to attend a university and get a college degree. Football players trying to make an NFL spend countless periods in the gym and on the practice field to showcase themselves on Saturday night. Parents sacrifice their leisure and resources to raise their children to give them the possibility of having a better life than they ever did. Life is a series of trades. Philosopher-poet Ralph Waldo Emerson observed, "For everything you have missed, you have gained something else, and for everything you gain, you lose something." Leaders must sacrifice a lot of their time, effort, and energy to get where they want everyone to be. After a while, you have so much experience in gut instinct, you gain the law of intuition. Colin Powell, retired Army General and former Secretary of State, says that the main problem he sees in leaders is that they require too much information and want 100% of the data before they make a decision. Great leaders can make a decision after gathering only 40 to 60% of the information, and then he or she uses their experience to make up the difference. This just comes with time. You get in tune with the organization, and you can sense people's attitudes and the morale of the company. You don't need to sift through financial reports to know how the company is doing. Intuition makes leadership more of an art than a science. Ultimately, leaders always find a way for the team to win. Every leadership situation is different. Every crisis has its own challenges, but what all leaders have in common is that they share an unwillingness to accept defeat. There's no plan B, and losing isn't even registered as a possibility in their mind. With no safety net and their backs against the wall, they figure out what must be done to achieve victory. With that, leaders can always use a bit of help. The law of momentum, a leader's best friend. An organization with no momentum is like a train at a dead stop. It's hard to get going, and even anything on the track can keep it from going anywhere. When you have no momentum, morale is low, and even the simplest tasks seem impossible or insurmountable. In contrast, an organization with momentum is like a train moving as fast as 60 miles per hour. You can build a brick wall across the tracks, and the train will plow right through it. Minor problems are merely blown by, not even registering. This is why coaches of opposing teams often try to control it. Have you noticed in the NBA, they always call a timeout when a team goes on a stretch or the crowd gets amped up? Why? Because they're trying to stop the other team's momentum before it gets too strong. With that, the law of timing. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. When to lead is just as important as what to do or where to go. Timing is often the difference between success or failure of an event. Intuitively, you as a leader know when it's time to seize the opportunity and when to let your team relax. I used to make this mistake all the time, not knowing when to give my guys breaks after doing a successful job. Sometimes people just want to be left alone and recharge when they're on holiday break. Finally, having good terms means nothing if you don't leave a legacy or successor to carry it on. A test of a leader's true value is measured in who takes over and who continues to take over. Like planting a tree, you probably won't reap the benefits you implement during your term, But when we know full well we will never sit and enjoy the shade, that is the essence of leadership. Legacy is only created if you leave your organization with message to do great things once you're gone. This is made through priorities. The idea is this: if you focus your attention on activities that rank in the top 20% in terms of importance, you will have an 80% return on your effort. Having 24/7 activities does not necessarily mean accomplishment. If you have 100 customers, the top 20 will provide you with 80% of your business, so focus on them. If you have 10 employees, you should give 80% of your time and attention to the best 2. This is the law of empowerment. Only secure leaders give power to others. The number one enemy of empowerment is fear of losing what we have. Weak leaders worry that if you help subordinates, you'll become indispensable. But the truth is that only to make yourself indispensable is to make yourself dispensable. If you continually raise good teams, people will eventually know it's you that's doing so. Theodore Roosevelt once said, "The best executive is one who has enough sense to pick good men to do what he wants done, and enough self-restraint to keep from meddling with them while they do it." When I first started my career, I thought personal growth was the key to being able to make an impact. But I realized that while it is important, to truly create change is to help create more leaders, not followers. Creating more empowered leaders causes the law of explosive growth. To add growth, lead followers. To multiply growth, lead leaders. These leaders can eventually take their own organizations themselves, which in turn creates an exponential growth on your own investment. The last law, process. Leadership develops daily, not in a day. There are lots of laws. Some you're good at, some you need to work on. But like investing, leadership compounds through years of hard work, practice, and experience. You have to be in it for the long haul, the really long haul. The process doesn't happen overnight. Demosthenes of ancient Greece became the greatest orator by reciting verses with pebbles in his mouth and speaking over the roar of ocean waves, and he did it all despite having been born with a speech impediment. Hall of Fame player Larry Bird became an outstanding free throw shooter by practicing 500 shots each morning before he went to school. The same is with any other skill, just like leadership. Leadership is complicated. In 5 years, you'll be a leader. In 20, you'll start teaching others. And in 40, they'll say that you were born wise and naturally talented to lead. There's no quick fix. The longest route is the shortcut. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something new in about 10 minutes. I know this one ran a little over. Stay tuned for the next one. Peace.